Cool. Okay, so while that happens, I will give a quick introduction to Simon. He's the technical director at Document Modeling, a company he founded in 2012 that is reinventing the way contracts are drafted by converting document content into structured data. My friends outside are calling me. Simon has got to run immediately after this session, but he'll be back again tomorrow as one of our experts. So if any of you have any questions for him or want to talk more about the very cool work he's doing, come back tomorrow and he'll be here all day.
Hello. To the start, thanks, PT. All right. Just testing. Yep. Okay, good. Hi, my name is Simon. I'm as Graham said, I'm the technical director of a company called Document Modeling. And today I want to present to you documents as data, or how machines can see contracts as we do. So machines can already read contracts, right? And I'm talking like paper contracts, not blockchain contracts, because when blockchain people talk about contracts, they're talking about code. Just before I get any further, how many people are technologists here and how many people are lawyers? Lawyers? Yeah, okay. Technologists? Okay, so mostly technologists. Okay. All right, so I can get techie. Yeah, great. Machines can already read documents, right? Well, kind of. When we look at a document like this, we can see a very clear nesting structure. So 6.1 is obviously inside of 6. A is obviously inside of 6.1. But if you go down a level to the actual data that underpins it, typically everything's written in Microsoft Word, and Microsoft Word represents things as a list of styled paragraphs. So here we've got the subscriber being satisfied, which is A here, and it is at the same level in the data structure as termination by the subscriber, which is here. So about the only thing you can see in the data that you might be able to interpret the actual nesting structure from is this heading. Heading 2, heading 3. But actually, if you look even further, this final paragraph here, the issuer complying, that's B, but that has no heading anywhere. So essentially, what a computer sees when it's processing documents and what you and I see are different. So why is that important? So it's mostly important, well, it's not massively important. I mean, all the legal tech that you see at the moment is using this system as it is now. But you would think that if a machine could see a contract in the same way that we do, that, well, legal tech would be better. And in fact, cheaper to develop, faster to iterate on, and potentially unlock a whole heap of other new use cases. So we have this thing called the Prose Document Engine, and we invented it by complete accident. And essentially it takes in a PDF or Word document and it produces structured semantic data. So what does that mean? Okay, so it takes in a document which looks like that to us. To a machine, it looks like a list of styled paragraphs. And it produces, well, this is JSON. So this is a data format. The important things to note here are that what we're seeing here is a clause, and it has a list of children. Now, those children can be paragraphs, they can be other clauses, images, it doesn't matter. What I'm trying to show here is that we're modeling that nesting explicitly. And we also produce a visualization of that data. So you can see the box around A encapsulates I, etc. So it's very explicit. So why is it important to have that explicit nesting for legal tech? Well, context is obviously very important in legal documents and contracts. If you have the neighbouring context, so legal tech at the moment is parsing documents top to bottom, and they are trying to work out what, say, a sentence is talking about, and at the moment they can use the thing above it and the thing below it, maybe all the things above it and all the things below it. But it's still not amazing. But if you have the structured semantic context, okay, so we know that this particular sentence is in the non-competition, 16 non-competition. So we can instantly infer that this is about non-competition. There's a whole... I'm going to get onto a use case of why or how that particular structure can be used. Essentially, this technology or this idea is an enabler, right? So by itself, having contracts represented, as we see them, doesn't do anything, but it enables legal tech companies to build amazing things. So it gives us a deeper understanding of documents. So it gives us a clause level understanding. So we can do things like build semantic reusable components, i.e. reusable clauses, very easily. We can do things like precedent tracking. So knowledge managers can go, where is this clause used? Clause level change history. We can do amazing blockchain-based things like peer-to-peer marketplaces for precedent clauses. Check out the website. The thing I wanted to explore today is how it can improve machine learning. So, that's the other big buzzword in computational law is machine learning. And machine learning requires lots of data. The richer the data, the better the results. The better it's going to solve the problems for the industry. So, as I've said before, all existing systems are trying to find... they're running on a stream of text. So the idea is, hey, if we have structure, surely all these systems are going to be better. Now, before I delve into that, I want to kind of say, why did we develop something which can turn documents into data if it's completely useless by itself? Well, we did it by accident. We've got this thing called PROS, Structural Document Editor. So it's, as Graham pointed out, it's trying to replace Word. It's trying to be the next generation product for drafting contracts. And the thing that it does, which is really what we're talking about today, is it models contracts explicitly. So it has those nested levels of clauses. It understands annexes and schedules. It understands what defined terms are. And so when we have to save this out to a file format, we save it out as that JSON structure that you saw before. But of course, all documents out there are in Word format. So we had to build something which could take Word format and turn it into our format. And this was ridiculously hard because you're basically looking at a set of styled paragraphs and you're trying to go, okay, what did the author intend when they were drafting that? Oh, they intended that paragraph to be inside of 2.1 but outside of C. And anyway, we built something, we started talking to legal tech, and we had this really interesting response where they were like, hey, yeah, I can see PROS is great, but importing those documents, that must have been really hard. Hey, that we could use that. And we kind of got this impression that it solves a fundamental issue in legal tech, which is that computers aren't seeing the same thing that machines aren't seeing the same thing that we are. And so we reached out to a bunch of legal tech companies, and the applicability was quite broad. So we spoke to companies like Legal Sifter and Thought River, which are AI companies, and I'm going to delve into their use case after this. We spoke to big data room companies like Ansarada, startups like Law Advisor, and all of them could see some use for it. But today I just want to show how documents as data can make AI systems better. Okay, so this is a clause. It looks pretty normal to us. There's an obvious nesting structure. But actually, if you have that structure, you can put the data together in new ways. You can actually create new data from the existing data. So here you can see I've color-coded it here. We've just collapsed the structure to create a wholly contained sentence, paragraph. I mean, that has all the context that it needs to be interpreted by a machine. And then, of course, permutation number 2 is you collapse it and you use II. So this has created new data from old. So you can imagine a contract. I mean, this is an extremely simple example. You can imagine a contract that's 40 pages long and all the permutations of collapsing that structure. A second use case of how it can help AI is simple clause classification. So here, this is basically the way it typically works is that reading a stream of text, a system would have to pull out a section of the document which mentions these terms, like intellectual property, and cluster it. So it would have to say, okay, it says intellectual property a whole bunch of times here. I'll try and find the closest clause, and I'll relate that back to a user. But because we've attacked it from another angle, we've actually made the whole process easier because we've broken it up into clauses, and then you can just pass clauses off to this AI engine and say, is that an intellectual property clause? Is that an intellectual property clause? So the system becomes easier, faster to develop because you're starting with a data structure which represents the contract properly. There are a bunch of other uses. So anything that you can do for documents, you can do at the clause level now. So you can do precedent tracking, as I mentioned before. Knowledge managers can actually start to go out and find what market is in a particular industry or vertical. So in this way, it kind of turns KM teams into, it changes them from being reactive. At the moment, I think in most law firms, a lawyer would say, hey, I want this to be a precedent because I use it a whole bunch. Click it, it goes off to the precedent team, the knowledge management team, and they go through a process to get it approved. This can actually make it so that the KM team periodically reaches out to the documents that have been delivered and says, what is our change of control clause in this particular sector over the last 3 months? And in that way, they can become proactive and they can just keep on top of things. Now, I have to say that this system is not built. This is just something you could build based on a technology that works at the clause, a data format that works at the clause level. In a similar way, in-house teams, like big telecommunications companies, can go, okay, how does this particular clause vary across all of our subcontractors' agreements? You can, of course, build precedent systems. You can build contract management systems. All legal tech can benefit. So, it's a summary. All technology to date is built with a huge amount of missing data. Essentially, everything is built using paragraphs and documents, and they're the kind of the two levels that the systems understand. And of course, we as humans, when we read a contract, we're working with clauses and we're working with annexes, schedules, defined terms. And why is this? Well, the drafting tools that we use by default, it's not really by choice, it's by default. We use Microsoft Word because, well, what else is there? They're at fault because they're generic products and they represent a document as a list of styled paragraphs because they don't have that higher level understanding of what someone is doing. So going forwards, I believe that the whole legal industry can move faster and achieve more if we model contracts as contracts. So if we model things explicitly, if we have clauses, nested clauses, annexes, schedules, defined terms, and not styled paragraphs. So how can we do this? Well, prose, the genesis of the whole concept, it models contracts explicitly and it produces structured data. We split out that little import piece of code. Well, it's not little. We split out the import piece of code and we're calling that the prose document engine. We can provide that as a service. And I think there's some scope to standardize. So wouldn't it be fantastic if all legal providers had a common format for contracts? Legal 2.0 will be about data. So next generation legal, I'm not talking 2 years, I'm talking kind of 5, 10 years. It's going to be about data. So I'm encouraging everyone who's in legal tech to please leverage the hard work that we've done, accidentally. And the future is really bright for legal tech because there's so much that we can do. Everywhere you look within the legal industry, there are inefficiencies and ways that technology can help. So I want to leave you with a final thought. I mean, this is the about blockchain after all. So executing contracts on blockchain, I mean, that's what everyone in the legal industry is kind of hot under the collar about. You're really going to want either an understandable contract structure, as in nested levels of clauses, or you're going to want some kind of standard. Because I can see a future where the code for an executable contract is embedded right there within a contract. So you may have seen before, Prose is an IDE for drafting contracts. Well, Prose can also be an IDE for coding contracts. Further reading there, and if you have any questions, I think I've got heaps of time. How much time do I have?
We've still got 20 minutes.
20 minutes. I hope you guys have lots of questions. Yeah?
What happens to legal exam around that?
I don't know. Was it structure around documents? I know there is one about structure around like case management and matter management and how to do that, and it just but it stops at the document level. Was it? Yeah, right. Legal XML. I don't know. Maybe it never went anywhere. I don't know. I'll have a look. Yeah, sure. I mean, the semantic web, it's still going, I guess. Editing. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I'm actually not sure what the question was. He was just saying that a lot of this technology was around, 10 years ago, in the form of trying to map XML onto contracts. I'm sure it was. Hopefully, we can, I don't know, if it's dead, we can kick it up, restart it. I don't know, next question, I guess. Sorry, I didn't hear the last bit, thanks to...
Every legal contract I've seen, I presume every precedent says that any
Sure. They have no meaning when you read it. The question was, all legal documents say that the headings are there for guidance only, and they actually have no meaning, and that's speaking from a legal perspective, right? So machines aren't going to be presiding over court cases, hopefully, ever. But those headings obviously have a meaning to a user, right? And so what we're trying to do here is we're trying to say, let's bring the contract in line with what a user sees. Not necessarily anything to do with law, not necessarily anything to do with the actual content of what is written in the contract. Just let's, when a lawyer or anyone reading a contract reads it and they see those headings, they're kind of building this structure in their head about what things are referring to. Typically, I think lawyers, when they first receive a document, will zoom all the way out so they get a feel for the bones of it. They get a feel for, the high-level headings. And then they'll go, okay, well, I'm interested in the change of control part of this. Okay, I'm going to zoom into that bit. And so they already know they're in the change of control section. So when they read a paragraph completely, out of context, they know what it's about. And machines just aren't, they're not capable of doing that because they don't have that structure. They're just working on a different set of data. Does that answer your question?
Let me rephrase.
Yep.
Is there any work being done with sensible things?
I'm doing that work. Yeah. So, not that I know of. Okay. So there is Exari. I mean, there's lots of systems out there. No one's attacked it the same way that we have. So there's lots of data extraction systems like Kira, Exari, etc. And they're...
I'm not talking about this.
Yep.
I'm talking about
Oh, the system. Wow. Okay. No, not as far as I know. No one is attacking the system from, as in the law. No. Yeah, sure. I mean, who would do that, I guess? I mean, that's the question. Yeah, I mean, I'll get out there and I'll say, we need to change, but, someone's got to hear it. Someone's got to do something. Yep, go on. Sorry, I'll go the guy in front of you. Yep. Yes, you.
Just on that last question, have you considered working with Data 61 on digital legislation?
Yeah. So I've spoken with Data 61 a couple of times now. I haven't approached them again about what we've been doing in the last couple of months. Their legislation stuff was it's kind of varied over the last couple of years. So they started with compliance, like taking legislation, taking business process models and trying to map them together. They've moved in a slightly different direction at the moment. I am going to touch base with them really soon, in the next couple of weeks, because I think that we can just basically help them understand maybe some of the document.
Because that's what I was thinking of, like your ID, there's a lot of synergy with, draft, with what we can do in the Parliamentary Council's office, making law as law.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know Data 61 have problems with getting people over the line in terms of, why that's good. So, you know, like they've got a great system and all that kind of stuff, but they actually need the lawyers to code it up, and the lawyers are, you know, why would I do this? You know, how's it going to help? You know? Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, no. Yes, you.
I mean, I think there's a fundamental question here about the way the market works. And by way of history, from 15 years ago, I can tell you in 1990, I was running my PhD using a system called the editor by a company called Albertest.
Yep.
It was a WYSIWYG editor that worked on a structured document format called SGML, which allowed you to define all sorts of structuring tags. It later influenced HTML. That company it went out of business. And there's something here about a very pernicious influence of consumer technologies. It's Word.
Yeah.
I'm the work of specialists. The consumer technologies are ensuring that more specialized tools just don't find the market.
Yeah, for sure. Did everyone hear that, or do I have to repeat it? Can I summarize everything that he said? So, yes, basically he was doing a PhD, and there were tools back then. When was it? 10 years ago? 20 years ago? 1990, so like hundreds of years ago. And yeah, there were tools back then for doing this exact thing, like what Prose does now. And he was saying that, you know, there's this real problem where consumer technologies like Microsoft Word kind of outcompete you know, specialized technologies that are built for purpose. So my response to that, I think times they are a-changing. So within large law firms, it is actually really, really hard to, you know, change from Microsoft Word. Like, they have huge amount of systems and investment in both their processes and their actual technology stack, you know, like precedent systems, plugins, all that kind of stuff. But there's this new kind of segment that's starting up called New Law, which you guys are all probably well aware of, which is basically lawyers who have been in that large law firm and they've said, well, this is horrendously inefficient. I'm going to start my own law firm and I'm going to do things much more efficiently using technology. I'm going to pass the benefit on to my customer. I'm going to do things cheaper for my customer. And that's the whole business value proposition of their business, right? And so they're actually making a dent in the market. And so this is driving cost pressures on the larger firms to start to look at things to go, all right, well, what can we do to compete with these small law firms? And I think there's going to be a critical mass at some point where perhaps it's through a standardization process where everyone's using the same data. It may not be Prose, by the way. It could be that, you know, we're using technology to convert from Word documents into this underlying data format, and then everyone's using that data format, that we're going to make that step forward. Hopefully Prose will be a piece of that. Maybe not. Does that answer your question? Sometimes I just miss the mark. Yeah, okay. Oh, sorry. I'm not a very good arbitrator here, but yes, go on. Right. So is this for, who's the consumer here? You or Parliament? Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. I'm almost certain I'm not going to be able to summarize that. Yeah, so I guess the overarching thing there is, because we're unlocking content from documents, we're not looking at that document level, you can start to put things together in unique ways. We actually have a database which sits behind Prose, so that when we store things to our database, I used to go save as to our database, it actually decomposes it into its clause levels, so that you have individual reusable clauses, taggable as well. And the second level of that is that when they do get reused, we actually keep a relationship between them, so that when you have one document and you've reused a clause and you've put it in a second document, there's a relationship between those two. One is derived from the other, and you can start to build these maps about where clauses have come from, such that something over here changes, you can kind of follow those maps and say, well, what would that affect? And I guess you're thinking in a different frame of mind, which is actually if you have all this legislation like this and you break it down into its clauses, you can kind of bundle them together or produce new sets of data, which can help. I don't know, who's the help? Okay. Yeah, okay, enforcers, yeah, all right. Yeah, okay, so like compliance and... Okay. Yeah. Sure. I think step one is getting this data, a data structure, either standardized or kind of, adopted. Yeah. Pull bits out.
In true hacking style, we are mid-presentation, now going to be moving upstairs to get away from the noise. So I'm going to now Simon is still going to continue to answer questions right here, right now. Just to let you guys know that we're going to take a quick break of about 5 minutes. Get a drink of water if you're too hot, which I'm sure we all are. We're going up to the 3rd floor, and we're going to be live streaming our transition to the 3rd floor as well. Very exciting stuff.
So I'm staying here for now, right? Okay. Sorry, I had a question here before. I think everyone's...
Hey, it's John here again. It was just a quick observation on the tools. You were talking about the advent of tools and then the way they died, and people still using things like Microsoft Word and standards. Speaking as a coder, we'd never write code in Word. You just wouldn't. You'd be using IDEs, integrated development environments, which are designed to develop the code that you're after with all the recognition, the colouring, the macros, etc. that you need. And I think, as we saw here, this is a process and IDE, that's the one. It's going to take people getting away from Word altogether and abandoning and going to the tools that actually are needed as contracts move away from English descriptions that we hope kind of match up with what we want to actual coding descriptions that are a lot closer and a lot more integrated and a lot tighter. You're going to need IDEs, and I think that's the only way it's going to go. And I get that it didn't happen before, but I think you're seeing now a whole heap, certainly in the coding space, of IDEs coming out that are basically free. You can go and download Visual Studio with 12 plugins, or Atom with 12 plugins, all sorts of IDEs. And we're going to start seeing more and more platforms coming out, and hopefully you'll get a variety to choose from, and one of them will become the standard. But you move away from Word.
I just think that Microsoft, when the time comes, will just go, oh, this is a marketplace for us now, so they'll just put something out in the format that we're all wanting for.
In terms of coding, you can go out and download Visual Studio for free, you plug in a whole heap of stuff, build yourself an IDE, and off you go. Versus Word, where they still charge a lot of money for the yearly subscriptions. So I agree with you, they're going to have to compete. They already have the coding board that's in the league board.
Thanks, Simon. Carolyn, thanks for your presentations. Very interesting. So I'm the head of a KM team in a large law firm, and I've been involved in KM and precedents for the last 20 years. I grew up with SGML, gentleman over there. I've been through the legal XML resurgence as well. I just wanted to comment on the market. The market is different, and I completely endorse your comments there. We are in a much more efficiency-driven and cost-conscious market than we have ever been before. And so anything that can drive that is going to be looked at, I think. What we do have, though, with Word and teams like mine is a huge amount of inertia that we're carrying forward. And people like you need to help people like me to make the business case to be able to move forward. So we really have to be targeted around what's in it for the market, what's in it for our clients, what's in it for us in terms of revenue and cost efficiency, and that's going to be the key. Second thing I wanted to say quickly, just in relation to the ability to transfer legal documents in Word into code, and it applies to Data 61 as well with the work they're doing in legislation. I think the real exciting opportunity there is just to streamline, because as soon as you start to code English language into code that can be read by a machine, the ambiguity leaps out at you, the duplication leaps out at you, and the ability to actually streamline and make contracts more understandable is going to drive access to justice as well, and I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, so I actually have something to say about that as well. So you guys familiar with the concept of contract design or legal design? So, so it's essentially lawyers starting to go, hey, wow, the contract is not the end product. The contract is just enabling people to build an end product. What is going to be useful for our customer? So the lawyers are thinking this. What is going to be useful for our customer? Oh, if we had checkboxes next to each clause, that will enable our building industry customer to just check things off as they're going. Or our customer is an end user with no legal knowledge. We need explainer bubbles next to it. So that's essentially what this whole contract design, legal design thing is. And I think that's kind of also changing the industry a bit. It's far less driven by markets, I think. Well, I guess the people who are doing that, people are coming to them because they're able to produce these documents which are more useful for the people, their client. So it will change the market, I guess. And I want to just point out that systems like Prose can also help with that. So one of the beauties of Prose is that it completely separates the content and the presentation. So the content is clauses, schedules, annexes, blah, blah, blah. The presentation is applied whenever you take it out to another system. And so you can see that how that's going to help systems like contract design, where they want to have little thought bubbles off to the side. That's actually a lot of word processing to build in Word. Whereas if you have a system which is one level removed, you can basically get it to spit that format out or another format out, so long as you're modeling the actual content. Other questions?
Hi Simon, Jacob here. Thanks for your presentation. Have you considered using your application to, I suppose, help people understand changes made by amendments acts? Because if you could break it into clauses, it'd be easy to track those changes and then ascertain legislative intent.
I mean, to be honest, I don't understand how those amendments are pushed out and how they are tracked. Prose can help, any of these systems can help in a number of ways. I haven't had any conversations with any legislators. Basically, I'm keeping kind of away from government because everything's slow and we're a startup. We are trying to do new things. So we're trying to iterate quickly and bring on customers who can move fast. So, yeah.
If I could suggest something, rather than going to government, you could partner with platforms like Osly, and then they already have the amendments there, but if you could streamline it, it'd be easier to track these changes.
Yeah. Totally. Excellent tip. I will, if you've got a contact there. No more, sorry. Oh, bam. Was that 20 minutes? No more.
No more. All right, thank you so much for that. Round of applause for Simon. Thank you so much. we have a little bit of change of plan. James is our next speaker, and he's setting up in a different room. It's incredibly hot in here, and it was a hot topic as well, and probably Simon as well. But what we doing now is let's have a little bit of break, just grab some water, stay hydrated, and we will then kind of guide you up to the new room. We're setting everything up as quickly as possible, and then we keep going in the new room.
All right, live streaming the move to the new room.